Now,
So it's a really nice product.
You guys offer these services. You could do these interviews. You could do these coachings. But what you actually do is you certify different people within organizations so they can use these models as well.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that the very first benefit that comes to mind is, look, there's 5 million different ways to ask questions, okay? There's, I don't know how many different frameworks that you could make up, but this is a solid framework that relieves me of the stress of creating something that's stable and valid, and I can use it, and it'll give me a framework. I can change the questions if I want, but it saves me a lot of time. And if you train people within the company, what I'm assuming is one of the absolute benefits of this interview guide is, and this is something I think that often falls to the wayside, partly because of the stresses of modern day working and also because of home office and all that kind of stuff. It's a great way to get to know people.
Oh yeah, I've had great interviews using the PAPI. I've had great interviews with other tools, but I really love the wheel.
Yeah.
Because it tells a story and everything's connected and everything's on one page. And I've learned so much from people, and everyone is different. So in that way, this tool is really great. Yeah.
And I would assume that for the interviewee, although I'm sure there might be some apprehension, perhaps, especially with the present wave of layoffs. I think, and this is a quote from John Maxwell, I think one of the questions that an employee asks, whether they respect and want to follow a leader, is, does this leader care about me? And asking real questions shows that you care. And I think that's the benefit of the person that's being interviewed. So I think that's a great concept. Then there's one more report. What's the big difference between the interview guide and the coaching report? Sorry to pick your brain here, but this is all. So then they just hold this in the mirror. This is the biggest one. This is like a whopping, how many pages? This is 40 pages or something?
Yeah, this includes everything. So for jobs, we can only highlight the competencies that are necessary for the role. So the report will be shorter. We just sent you the full thing. The coaching report breaks down each scale and each competency into positive and negative indicators, and positive and negatives for each.
So not positive, negative determinants. You're not determining one or the other. You're just saying this is where you need to look. Exactly.
Yeah, it could potentially be, etc. This is the 50%, 50% certainty of, look, we've seen this before, go explore, but the other 50% is up to the person. And I think regardless of what tool you use, you should go and play detective, because we are so wonderful and complex. And that should be taken into consideration.
You have potential motivators in here, potential strengths, potential development areas. It's brilliant. And let's face it, this is maybe not, so the algorithms and the studies behind it might be rocket science, but the report itself, our understanding, is not rocket science, but it just takes so much work out of your hands and gives you a framework to work with, which I think is great. There's a couple other reports. There's a job interview guide. I guess that's when you're interviewing something. And then there's a motivator, demotivator report. What's that?
That just highlights your main motivators and demotivators based on your skills output.
So I know when to use the electroshocker and when, as we say in German, Zuckerbrot und Peitsche, with candies and whip. Yeah, the carrot and the stick. Okay.
Look, there are so many reports that are out there, but most people use maybe 2 or 3 of them.
Okay.
Because they use them often, and I also just use 2 or 3 of them, really. If I want a bit more insight, and especially if I'm new, the motivators and demotivators is nice as a snapshot of preparing yourself for what to look out for, etc., and a lot of other things. But it can also be overwhelming. The report options, and there are many. So make sure that you don't overwhelm yourself when you give feedback as well. Pick the things that work for you, to give the candidate the best opportunity to show themselves.
Yeah.
That I think is still in the foreground. Whatever you need to do to do that, then you won.